Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Majestic Collectibles. This is our ninth podcast. Today is March 16th, 2023, so a little bit behind. Usually I do them on Wednesdays, and this probably actually won't even launch till maybe Sunday. I don't know. What happened was the previous podcast, I completely forgot. This is spring break week. And it's been a very busy week. We took some afternoons off to do stuff with the kids, and that was a lot of fun. Got the NCAA men's basketball tournament starting today. And so yesterday, Wednesday, when I usually shoot these, man, it was just a zoo. We were out and about. It's a little rainy today, so we're staying in, so I thought it'd be a good time to do this. But boy, if you're around Central Iowa right now and a basketball fan, you can't be in a much better place. And the Lady Hawks in Iowa City, they're in the tournament too over there in Iowa City. So we're having lots of fun here basketball-wise. So this topic, actually, I got it from my son Cam Kabawabi. You might have seen him in some of the videos, especially the trading card unboxing videos. And his suggestion is, what are the biggest mistakes that I've made as a dealer, reseller? And I thought that was a really good point. And, he's a pretty smart kid. He gets that from his mom. And this is something there's no particular order to this. Okay, so I didn't really put them in necessarily any order. I do want you to keep in mind, though, while you're listening to my screw-ups and my errors, and so you don't have to learn the hard way, and maybe if you've been doing this a while, you've experienced the same thing. Either way, leave me some comments on it. So keep in mind, I guess, flexibility and adaptability are very important in any business, not just reselling, but I think any business. You think of a lot of old name businesses that aren't here anymore, from Sears to Kmart to Montgomery Ward, and there's many others, and they weren't flexible and they weren't adaptable, and now they're not here. And that same thing can happen as a reseller. And so I picked out four. There's certainly not my only four mistakes, but I just thought I'd run you through some of these scenarios. Most of them happened years and years ago. When I was first starting out or trying to figure things out a little bit. But the number one mistake I made was I thought I was going to be a wheeler dealer sports card guy back in the 1990s. Sports cards was something that was really cheap and affordable, even the older ones, and then they just exploded, and I was kind of in on the ground floor of that right before they started making all the super junk wax era. So, I got in on the early Upper Deck and some of the Leaf, and then that late 80s, early 90s stuff. And then by 93, 94, certainly after that, boy, it just went downhill. And I got burned pretty good. It was a total disaster. No kidding, it almost put me out of business. So, we're going back 30 years. The business was really good for 3 years. And then all the companies overproduced everything. And then in order to move out the extra inventory, because they had such large inventories, they started dumping this stuff wholesale, actually below wholesale, to anyone that wanted to buy a full case. I don't care if it was Upper Deck, I don't care if it was Tops, I don't care, you name the company. They had stuff piling up in warehouses, and they were desperate to get rid of it. And so that led to a lot of non-dealers flooding the market. These guys working out of their home, kind of like me right now, except, they didn't have a chance. They just flooded the market with product below wholesale prices. And most of these guys have been doing this, have been buying the product with credit cards. And then the same thing happened to them that happened to the big companies, as the inventory built up. They couldn't move the inventory out. They quickly fell behind on their payments and started dumping the stuff on the market to try and get their bills paid off. And it took about 6 months, which is not a long span, even in the early internet or even pre-internet, certainly pre-eBay days. It took 6 months and the market just absolutely incinerated. And companies started going out of business, started filing for bankruptcy. A few of them tried to merge. Some of them bought some of the other lines, of ones that had failed, which that was even I don't know what they were thinking there. At the time, I had a retail store, and I ended up getting stuck with about $15,000 worth of sports card inventory. That was my wholesale cost. And remember, this is like 1993, 94. So this was a lot of money back then, okay? The whole inventory I figured was worth maybe $4,000 retail. I barely got through the next 2 years just because of the 90s sports card collapse, and I've never been a new sports card dealer since then. I won't even touch them. This latest round of silliness and speculation and the overhype and the overgrading that's kind of coming down around everybody's ears, well, ankles right now. I've seen it before, and I didn't want it to happen again, and I just stayed away with it. So just that was one of the biggest mistakes. Made it really, really early on, right there when I was still actually in college, before I'd even graduated with as an undergrad yet. So a little after this, actually, probably a couple of years. I don't know if you guys remember the Pogs. They were like the like milk caps. Except they had all this other fancy stuff on them. Just little thin wafers, round wafers. It was pretty obvious, at least to me, that the Pogs were a fad. But the mistake I made here wasn't that I jumped on the bandwagon. The mistake I made was that I didn't jump on at all. So even though I knew it wasn't going to last long, the short-term profit I left on the table by not carrying Pogs was huge. And again, I had a retail store at the time. I was bombarded with phone calls, people stopping into the store, and so I finally did start to stock them, probably, well after a year into the phenomenon. And as it turned out, even then, when things were kind of slowing down and getting super crazy on the production, just like the sports cards, I still couldn't get enough of them. I was ordering these. They came in these huge clear bags, and then they just stuff it in a box, like a big brown box, and you just pull this clear bag out. There's no sorting or anything to it. They were just, you ordered them literally several thousand at a time. And you could sell them by the pound, and I bought these plastic tubes, these long plastic tubes that had screw tops, and I just put out $5 and fill the tube with whatever you want. And I pretty much just left them in the box, and they'd go rummaging through, and then they'd stuff that tube full and give me $5 bills. And even when the fad died, and I was kind of liquidating my Pog inventory, so I didn't have a lot because they were really good sellers. But when it finally faded, which wasn't long after I got into it, again, maybe 6 months, I was just blowing out my Pog inventory at 75% off. Pog sheets, the slammers, the Pogs, the tubes, whatever it was. And I was still making a profit at 75% off because of the insane markup. So you'd buy, one of these giant boxes, and I didn't get the biggest one because they actually had to deliver the big one to a loading dock. And I didn't have a loading dock at my store, so I had to order these smaller ones. And I think they were like $250, $300 for a box. And I don't know, I can't remember how many thousands were in one of those boxes. It was a huge number. And even after the phenomenon died, I couldn't lose. I mean, there was so much money in one of those boxes of bags of Pogs. It was just ridiculous. And I knew then I had made a mistake because it's like, listen, even though I knew it was a fad, okay, I had really good sources, you know, so I could have got a hold of it. Sometimes when you get a fad, trading cards in particular, but also other things, Beanie Babies, you know, you're locked out of that wholesale market. You have to be established. You can't just jump in when everybody wants to jump in. But because I was a comic book and collectibles store, I was automatically in, and I blew it, you know. So that was a huge mistake. Left a lot of money on the table there. So another mistake. This is a little later. So not developing my online eBay sales sooner. And I started selling on eBay in 1997, and it was very profitable. Selling mainly toy trains, some comic books, like the tin cars, friction cars they call them. Trying to think, that was probably most of it. Was that type of stuff. And so you know, in 1997 it was pretty good. It was the wild, wild west. By 2002, well, it really was oversaturated with junk products, and really, really poor sellers. I mean, just from outright fraudsters to just people that should not have been doing this without some education, and the buyers weren't a lot better. So a lot of fraudsters, crooks, inexperienced buyers. It was just very messy time on that. And originally everything was auctioned when I first started on eBay. Did fantastically well. But around 2001, the auctions weren't doing as well, and store listings were actually even worse. We're doing just terrible. Because all the garbage dump eBay had turned into. And, you know, it was just during that time, eBay kind of gave up on that, on us, on the market, which is not, I don't know, that's probably the first time it happened. It's not the last. And that's when they turned interested in, you know, purchasing other companies. They bought PayPal. They bought a lot more than PayPal. That's probably the one most people have heard of. And they quit paying attention to their core business. And Amazon was starting to become an online sales force, nowhere near what they were today. They're still doing their textbooks and books and things. And eBay wanted to go head-to-head with Amazon, just like they wanted to go head-to-head with Walmart and head-to-head with Whatnot and head-to-head with whatever's new and fancy and shiny. They just seem to run over there and forget everything they're doing and leave us hanging. And this was the start of the time period where eBay listings were cluttered up with cheap Chinese products. I mean, no matter what you searched for, the products that showed up were completely unrelated to what you searched for. They were all sponsored, all from China. And at this point, I just gave up because I couldn't even find my own stuff on eBay. So the only smart thing I really did was to keep my account open with the hope that things would improve. What I should have done, instead of just bailing, what I should have done was to focus and commit to an eBay store. I did not do that right away because I was mainly running auctions, and then they were classified listings, I think they were called at that time, something like that. And I should have worked harder to find products that were in demand. The products that I had been selling were getting replaced. They're getting replaced by anything from, you know, Beanie Babies to Hot Wheels. Think any of that 90s stuff, Barbie dolls. It was stuff I didn't want to mess with. Still don't really want to mess with. But it was several years later, probably not till maybe, I don't know, 2012, 13, 14. It was after the banking real estate crash, when, you know, the comic book sales kind of started coming back. The back issue market kind of started taking off. I mean, they had some of the Marvel movies. You know, it was really early, but they were gearing up, you know. And that's when I kind of finally decided to work on building up the eBay store and also expanding the product lines. Now it's doing very well, but I probably wasted, I'm thinking 10 years, 8 to 10 years, something like that, of sales and revenue by not developing my eBay store sooner. And it is frustrating, you guys out there, if you've been selling online or a reseller, you know how frustrating it gets sometimes dealing with eBay. You just want to pull your hair out, you know. And that's what happened to me. I should not have done that, though. You know, I should have focused. I should have organized things. Because in the early days, you know, you could pretty much throw anything on eBay and it would stick. It would sell. And then when that kind of unraveled and they moved away and started focusing on competing with Amazon and trying to take over the world and stuff, everything changed. Changed away from collectibles. That's hard to imagine now if you've been on eBay for the last 10 years. They've focused quite a bit on collectibles. But back then, it was kind of junk, to be honest, unless you had like an AF-15 or something really, really high-end. You know, the run-of-the-mill stuff, I just didn't seem to have it. So the last mistake I've got here, and I just hinted on that at the end of the last one, so I guess you can look at this as a bit of a double whammy. In fact, it was a double whammy. So not only did I not develop my eBay store and sit down and figure that out when I should have, the biggest, and this is, I think, the biggest mistake I've made, by far. And this has cost me a lot of money, and looking back on it, you know, older and wiser and more beat up, whatever, I kind of, you know, I kind of realized just what an idiot I was on this. And that's not expanding my product lines. So for many years, I only did comics and Lionel trains, new and old both. And I just wanted to stick with those two products basically for eBay. And after getting, you know, burned on the sports cards, so that's it was still a factor at this point, I was really reluctant to jump on another fad product. This is why I missed out on, you know, the Pogs. It's kind of why I missed out on some of the Magic the Gathering and Pokemon, too. And because I was very risk averse at that time. It worked in my favor in a couple of instances. The big one is I did not get caught up in the Beanie Baby disaster that is still 30 years later going on. That's just a rolling dumpster fire. That's kind of a China syndrome thing. It's just burning its way to the Earth's core. I still get calls. I am not kidding you guys. 3 to 4 calls a week about Beanie Baby collections. I get a lot of that Barbie doll and Hallmark stuff. So I did miss out on a lot of that. Wildly overproduced for everything, but there's still money to be made. I just didn't take the time. I just gave up on all of it. So I also, you know, here's the bad thing. I ducked those, but I ignored a growing market for vintage gas and oil. Signs, oil cans, you know, car-related stuff. And that's pretty much run its course now. There's still some good pieces, but overall, that market has been soft pre-COVID even. So I missed out on that. You know, there's just stuff I should have paid attention to. Primitives. I don't deal with furniture and glassware. That's something I would, you know, I've got a couple odd pieces, but never really dealt in. But Pokemon was in there. Magic the Gathering was in there. There was stuff in there, and I just ignored it. I just gave up. So after the bank disaster, that was in 08, 09, and everything, if you remember that, boy, it was a mess. Then I was kind of forced to look outside my comfort zone. The toy train sales, no kidding, in about a 9-month span dropped 87%. And my comic book sales, which were weak, had improved a little, but, you know, everything kind of died there for about a year, and they were not going to make up for the loss in toy trains. And so, you know what? What do I do? Well, I started kind of focusing back on selling at flea markets. Had, let's see, 3 antique mall booths, mainly in northwest Iowa, not where I'm at now, is before I moved. Well, some of it was, some of it wasn't. Most of it was before I moved down here. And there was another time I thought just packing in the business. I really, man, after getting beat up by the sports card thing, after getting beat up with eBay there in the late 90s, mainly early 2000s, and then this came, I thought, gee whiz, why am I even bothering, right? And, I thought I didn't have anything else to do. I'm in Northwest Iowa. There's not a ton of job openings, especially during the Great Recession. So I thought, well, there's got to be something out there. I started going to live auctions, household auctions, estate auctions, farm auctions, and I was driving all over Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, and it was a really good time. And I should have known this, but I didn't. But it was a really good time to do that because during the recession, everybody was hanging on to their money, so the prices on some stuff was going just dirt cheap. It was really fantastic, and I was coming home with pickup loads worth of stuff, and some of it was junk. I mean, there was always, you go to the auction. Yeah, it's not like today where almost 99% of it's online. You go, you stand at the end of a flat rack out at a farm auction, and everything they didn't sell, they'd shove into a corner. And then, I bought, I don't know how many flat rack corners of junk I bought for $5 to $10. And again, most of it was junk, but I found some really, really nice, expensive pieces in there. And I ended up with so much scrap, steel mainly, but some cast iron. And that's when I started. I'd take it down to scrap yards. Copper, brass, which I didn't get that much of, aluminum. But I get all that junk, and then I just sort it out by pile, haul it down in the pickup, and I got some money out of it that way too. So then I got a little braver, and started expanding my markets and my product lines a little bit. And this was a real good deal because I had to learn how to deal with all those leftovers. And eventually that kind of left me set up what I'm doing right now as I'm recording this and what I've been doing since probably 2017. And so I just had to figure it out. And what I figured out was if I don't want it, if I don't want to put it in my booth and I don't want to put it online, but yet there's some value, so you don't want to throw it away, that's when I started calling up some local consignment auctions. They run like monthly or bi-monthly auctions. And I just finally met one, signed a contract, and like 4 times a year, maybe 5 times a year, I just load up my full-size van, and we set a time up, and they have a shelf, kind of those industrial racks, they call them, pallet racking. And I've got like 3 long shelves of that, and when it's empty, because they don't like empty shelves, because if they have empty shelves, they have nothing to sell, right, at an auction place. So, when they get a shelf cleared off, I bring another van load down. I'm going to be bringing, I just talked to him 2 days ago, Tuesday. And I'm going to be bringing another van load down probably in about 2-3 weeks, sometime in the middle of April. So, that's something that got me thinking. And it really worked out. It was a real struggle. And those of you that have gone through this know it's not a lot of fun. You're really down on yourself, down on your capabilities, down on what you think you can do. And then when you get up there in age, when you're 20-something, it's a little different. When you're 50-something and this stuff happens, your options get more limited as you get older job-wise, especially over 50. So very, very grateful I'm at the situation I am now. But it was, it was a long time in the making. It didn't happen overnight, and it certainly was a rough ride at points. So that's it for this one. I'm sure I'll think of more mistakes somewhere down the line, and maybe I'll share those with you as they come up. Trying to remember, almost 40 years worth of stuff is a bit challenging sometimes. I like to put that stuff in the rearview mirror and not revisit it. But it is good to do this, especially in this situation. because I'm very happy I was able to fight through it all, and at least at this point make it work. I'm not under any any delusions that this thing could come falling down around my ears. With the stuff going on in the news today, it's certainly a possibility. But I think now I've got enough things figured out. I can roll with the punches, and that just goes back to what I was talking about before: flexibility and adaptability. And whether you're reselling or just life in general, I'm telling you, I think those are two great survival traits to have. So send me some more ideas for podcasts, guys. I've got maybe a couple in the wings here. They're nothing great. So if I can come up with something better, or you can come up with something better, please let me know. I'd be happy to talk on it if I can. Check out our other videos. Check out our other podcasts. Click like, hit subscribe, and thanks for listening.